the thing is that people are like, oh, I just want to start new. It's like, but you're starting new with like all the skills that I don't know, somebody, I probably heard somebody say that as well too. So I don't want to take credit for like that, but like the concept of like being able to really ground yourself in all the work that you've already done to get here, and to be really grateful that like you have the skills now, so that what it is that you're moving forward into, it is new, but it's done in with like a fresh pair of eyes, but it's also still being able to acknowledge that like you've worked so hard to get to this point where you have the skills that are going to be able to move forward with you. And
So I always ask every guest that comes on to like give one word to kind of describe something that's been on their mind a lot lately. Like if you had to do that, what would you say that word would be?
transitions.
Transitions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Expand on that. What do you mean by transitions?
I don't know. You said one word.
Well, now I'm telling you to expand on it.
No,
Let's
you're
get
like,
into-
expand. I'm like, yeah, okay. So
Let's start with the one word and then we'll expand from there.
No, I know. Well, I guess like the idea is just I started school in September again. So I'm going back to school for expressive art therapy. So that's been really awesome. Like just using all the work that I've done, like performing, but then like now it's in a more so like figuring out how to like help support other people in like a different way. I'm starting like like a job that I've been doing some work with them, but like I just started, like I signed like, well, I'm gonna be signing like a contract with them and stuff till like May. So it's just like a lot of transitions from like where I was at, and then kind of going into where I'm wanting to be. So yeah, it's just been really good and also challenging, like anytime that you're in situations where you're going from one space to the next, it's like, yeah, this is growth and it's good, but like, is is it really, like, like sometimes you're like,
Yeah.
what am I leaving behind? But like that's a big
Yeah.
thing about situations like this. You end up having to leave certain things behind when you do move into the next phase, so that's part of yeah, that's been a big part of my life these days, of just figuring out what I want to bring forward with me and what I want to actually keep working on. So yeah.
Nice.
Hmm.
Yeah, transitions and like sort of embracing change has been a common theme too on the
Mhm.
podcast. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think that was really the pandemic that kind of set it off. But what made you want to go into like
Mm.
schooling for this new like expressive art therapy?
Yeah. Well, when I first started looking into so I've just been like, since you've known me, I've been obsessed with therapy, right? Like, like I'm always like talking about how my therapist is the best and like how much I love her,
Yeah,
and that kind of stuff. And like, so I felt like from the conversations I was having with her, I felt like I was like really getting pretty, like I understood most of the stuff that we were talking about in full. And when she would give any of her input and things like that, I felt like I would love to be in that role, right? But I didn't want to go back to school for like psychotherapy because it's very specifically like talk therapy. And
Mm.
for me, like I started off in stand up, which was quite a lot of like, talking and like writing and things like that. And I was like, man, it's such a beautiful, expressive art in itself, and to be able to in the future hopefully be able to help people like hold space for them to um it being therapeutic to like actually create art in the avenues that I already have. So one of the actual so I started looking into art therapy, and I realized that art therapy was much more like you're trying to like make metaphorical things from what you're creating in the art. So you make the art and then you're like, oh, I see a lot of red or like these shapes, what does that mean or whatever.
I
Whereas,
see.
like, yeah, that's art therapy. Whereas
Is it
expressive,
more like a free flow then? Like when you're doing the art therapy, it's just like whatever comes to your mind, just start painting something.
so that's the
And
thing.
that's what you read into?
Yeah, so I'm not fully sure exactly with art therapy. What I understood of it was like you're
Mm.
trying to interpret everything when you were creating it. Whereas expressive art therapy was like more so about the process and the experience of it, your relational connection to the piece of art that you're creating. Or even when you're on stage, it's not about like the content of like oh, you talked about your family a lot. You're probably still worrying about your family. Yes, that probably is. But at the same time, it's like, what did it feel like being on stage and sharing your voice? You know, like that's more so expressive art therapy. So it's more relational, more about connecting. So for me, I felt also that expressive art therapy was like a niche thing, which was a little bit outside the box and a little bit strange. And I was like, that's much more me than like
Yeah,
art therapy.
yeah,
Art therapy is like much more like well, it's much more well known and like people know about it more and they connect to it more so. Whereas like what I'm doing, it's a little bit outside the box. It's very different. There's only a couple schools in Canada for it. Like so it's just been a really cool experience. And so making that decision definitely came in the pandemic though. Like during the time that I've had to like reflect on my like by myself and like really just think about what I want in my life, like being able to sit with myself, I realized that like I've been trying to prove myself for so long and like to show people like whether it's in performance arts or like my family or like everybody else like just trying so hard to like prove that I can do it that I wasn't listening as much, you know, like when I was like maybe like 10 years ago or so, it was like I had such an open mind to like life and like experiences and learning. And like the last couple of years, I just kept stepping forward as an expert, you know, like in my, you know, when I'm hosting weddings or like when I'm like working with kids or like all these things that people pay me money for, I had to be an expert at them. Right. And I felt that it was really draining for me and it wasn't where I wanted to be. So in the pandemic, I really wanted to open myself up more. So I like took like a kids writing class with like BIPOC TV and film
nice.
between May and March. So that was really cool. And then that really actually made me think like, oh, am I open to doing school? Because that was 2 days a week. And then this course was, so basically I was like, I'm going to apply for this class. I'm going to get in. Like, I didn't know if I was going to get in, but I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to get in. And once I get in, I'm going to see if I'm down for more schooling, if it's something that I enjoy. And I really enjoyed it. You know, like I could tell that I didn't want to go into kids like writing, like TV writing specifically. But it showed me that I was super down for school. And like since I started school in September, I've just loved it. Like I missed class last week because I had like a big event, and like I just ended up like being like, oh man, I really missed class, right? And it's like I've never felt like that. That's like
I
not
was just gonna
like
say that's almost like they should almost tell, like, I don't know, high school kids that they need to perhaps like wait until they're like mid 20s before they
Mhm.
even think about what they want to go to school for, because like you want to be excited for what you're going to
Oh
school
yeah.
for. Otherwise, you're just gonna like skip class and really take for granted maybe a loan that you got to pay for your
Oh man,
tuition.
yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's foolish almost to give 18-year-olds that much power.
That's the thing though, is that like our oh man, are we gonna get into it? Like our system is not created to like
uh,
empower people and to like help people feel as if they can autonomously create the path in their life. That's not what the system has been built upon. Like
it's not for that. Yeah.
yeah, it's not at all for that. It's like how do we make it so that families as a whole end up putting their children through like school, and they don't want them to go when they're at their best because they want them to go into multiple courses. They want them to be like part of the system right away. It's like if a kid doesn't know what to do, oh, just put him in school and then he'll figure it
They'll
out
learn
kind of.
something. Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
right? He'll learn
yeah.
something and like grow or whatever, but it's like yeah, for 20K a year, like you're just, you know, and it's
I remember
just
my buddy telling me about that, about university, about how the one university he was going to, he's like, if you took a program and you were doing poorly in the program, they didn't kick you out. They would just say, oh, why don't you transfer to like this program instead? Like it might be better
yeah,
for you. So then you're just giving money again, but over here, it's
yeah.
like you don't get that money refunded. It's like they just shift you over to a new
Yeah.
thing. It's
Which
like,
is like if you think about it as a business plan, that's pretty like that's retention. You're and
mhm.
then they also will be needing to finish the courses and
They'll
the
be
curriculum.
buying books, they'll be buying food,
Yeah,
they'll be living
exactly.
there. Like it's a
Yeah.
college is a money making like
Dude, it's
machine right now.
absolutely, and it's really hard to not feel like I'm part of that system because like obviously like my teachers are super like sweet and they're all like, you know, art therapists or expressive art therapists and like things like that, but like it still is like a school system, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like it's what's interesting is like it feels like it's somewhere in the middle, right? Because it's like it's similar to like post-secondary education. Yes, it is post-secondary education, but what it is that like it's not like they're trying to take advantage of all the little, like they're not being like, oh, your books are going to cost you like like
Dude,
$1,000 or something. It was like
yeah. I
I bought
remember
all
my
my
early
books.
college books were like $300-$400. I was like,
It's crazy.
what?
It's
And
crazy.
then the
Yeah.
resale value was like $60. You're like,
Yeah. And they
fuck.
had and they had like a store
Yeah,
by
yeah, to buy
the
back the
school
books.
to buy back the books, and then they'll sell the used books for like $20 less than. It was just crazy, right? It's like this system, right? So like I can see that there's certain elements inside of my school that are like the books and everything. They gave us like packages that are like PDFs or whatever, and for most of the readings, and then they got us to buy like 3 books, and it was like $150 total or something for the whole year. So I was like, they're not trying to force us into this, like, and if people don't buy the books, I honestly don't think that they would even care, like if you don't do the readings,
Yeah.
because it's just part. So for me it's like, yeah, it's like that's what keeps happening too. It's like I keep being part of these systems, but I'm figuring out how to still be myself inside of them, and if it doesn't fit, then I'm more comfortable to say, hey, yeah, that doesn't really work for me. But like what's crazy is that that's been really working for me, because I'm starting to see how much I can contribute to these realms that they have, and the
Yeah.
boxes that they've created in, like me being able to be myself to the level that I am, to not like give up my soul to them, really actually helps them too, because it helps them think outside of the box, right? And I've had a lot of really good conversations. Even the job that I'm like signing the contract for, like I didn't even do a workshop with them yet. And at one point I was like, I think I can build workshops for you guys. And then they're like, what do you, and then I was explaining to them kind of like how I was doing it previously. And I watched them run some of their workshops, and I was like, I could totally run like a workshop. And I built one, and I brought somebody in, like I met somebody and I brought her in without them even meeting her. And we ran a workshop, and then the place booked us again, like for 2 more workshops without,
Wild.
like, you know what I mean? Like it was just,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we've
yeah.
never done anything like that before, but it was because I was so certain of like what it is that I can contribute. And the guy was just like, what the hell? Like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
let's like, I was like, this is us trying it out, and it worked. Right. So that's the thing, is it's about a
It's a
big
hard
part
fear
of
to
it.
get
And
over though, is like a lot of people don't want to interject a better way perhaps to do something, or they want
exactly.
to sit back. But like that right there is like it can actually help, like, and it's almost worth taking that risk, because they might be like eternally grateful to you now for like being able to set something up like this that was a pain to them before perhaps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, another thing that you're like, the thing is that if people aren't willing to take risks inside of their business, then they're not having their clients and the people that they're working for at the top of their needs, right? If they are complacent and wanting to just be a part of a system and continuously do the same things, that's because they're afraid of growth. It reminds me of like stand-up comedians who've been doing it for like 30 years, and they're still telling like, my wife is like this, and like women and men are like this, Joe,
How
like,
about that airplane food? Am I
yeah.
right, folks?
And then you're just
Yeah.
like, yo, that place doesn't even exist after like 12 years or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah. The
even like,
references are like out of date.
yeah, they don't care, right? So, or they'll change
Yeah.
the reference to like, hey, tell me what's an updated reference of the exact same thing. And I was like, that just sounds like a cheat code for just be, they're just
Just
not
swapping
wanting to
out the
grow.
words. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's what I guess like a lot of what I've realized inside of uh my time in everything, pretty much it really just comes back down to growth. It comes back down to like, what is it that I truly want, is to like continue to learn, continue to grow, and just like get better at what it is that I'm doing. And that's like, sometimes obviously that gets exhausting, which is like why it's important to like have rest and like breaks, and like, create organically, and like or
Not
doing
through
like,
like some forced pressure where you're being paid
yeah.
for it, or like, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that.
which
Yeah.
is so important, Like I think there's a lot of people out there that have that certain element of pressure that I think they're getting overwhelmed with, So but yeah, yo, I haven't talked to you in a while though. Like I'd love to know like what you've been up to too. You moved to Ottawa, right? Like we're both in
Yeah.
Ottawa right
I
now.
know, it's so weird.
Yeah. What area do you live in?
Over like Nepean, that kind of area.
I'm in Nepean.
What?
Yeah, yeah. I live right by Algonquin College.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you're so close.
Yeah, where do you live?
Like Hogsback.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, that's super close. That's like 10 minutes.
Hell yeah. I gotta get an in-person studio set up then.
Yo, that'd be
So
sick.
funny.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't even like I used to do intros at the start of the podcast, but I'm like, no, I'll just like play the podcast. But for anyone who's watching this and you've already gotten to this point, this is Anto Chan. We were roommates back in the day. And we also did another podcast together called Pod Jobs, but I don't know. I don't think you can find any of those episodes. That was a fun podcast.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, and we
Yeah.
interviewed so many cool people on that. Like, it
I
was
looked
amazing.
back through the folder and there was like a lot. There was like a lot of episodes. I was like, holy shit, we
How
did
many
a
episodes
lot.
did we do?
I think we did like almost 50.
Wow.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, that's
like,
crazy.
damn. And they were like long. Some of them were long too. Like some
Oh
of them we
yeah,
just like kept it going, like whatever.
yeah. That was the weed for sure.
Dude, that was the funniest one. Just meeting Lars for the first time, like, well, second time, and doing a podcast, and we just get fried. And all we did was talk about croissants and cucumber water for like 2 hours.
Oh yeah, that was at his place, right? That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
funny. Yeah, wow. That was like, I really enjoyed that. And you took them off, eh? Like offline?
No, I think because I had them on Libsyn or whatever that site is, once you
Okay.
like stop paying for it, they just remove it after a certain
Oh,
point.
okay, okay.
So I think it's just gone after that, but I still have all the original files. So
Nice. That's
the
great.
only
Yeah,
problem is it's just there's no video, so it's all just like audio files.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Man, that was a great time. And that was like even at my old place. And then from the podcast, us getting to know each other, that's how we ended up moving in together. So that was
Yeah.
like, yo, my favorite moment still was when we first saw, like, we went to the basement one and it was like 1,400 and you have to like pay the deposit today and like, and we were gonna live there. And we
Yeah,
were
we
like,
were
oh my
like, let's
God.
hold it because we don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
nowhere to go. And then the next like day or 2 days later, we go to see like the place. And then right when we walk in, it was like a loft space and it
So
was just like
nice.
epic. Like you're just
And
so
the same amount.
yeah, same
I
amount.
was like, I'm
Remember
just
we
gonna
were
tell
like
that other
jumping up
lady to
and
go fuck
down. We were
herself.
like, it was like
Yeah,
a
we
movie.
asked
We were
them.
jumping
We're
up
like,
and down.
can we have a moment?
Yeah, yeah. And then he's like, okay. And he went on the other side of the door and we're like,
Just
oh,
going
that was
nuts.
so funny. Yeah, and then that roof was probably the best part. The roof, like overlooking the city.
Getting
Man,
to
that was
take advantage
definitely.
of that rooftop before it got like kiboshed was
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about that spot for sure. Yeah, and just being able to like see kind of like all the stuff that's happened since like what year was that you moved out? Was it 2019, 2018?
No, I think it was like maybe 2018,
Yeah,
maybe 20. I
early
don't know.
2019 probably, I think.
Oh, or was it 2017? I'm trying to think.
No, no, not 20.
No,
That was
no.
when we moved out.
Yeah,
When
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, dude, that place was lit. It looked almost like like a sitcom, like movie set, like the
It
way the
was.
door was, like a couple steps.
It was definitely like a sitcom for sure. Yeah.
They were
It
expecting
felt like
Kramer to come flying through the door at any second.
yeah, you never knew. And I didn't lock the downstairs that like often, right? And people would just come through the restaurant, and then the
Yeah.
front door was like open quite a lot too. So like sometimes I'd like, I'd walk out from my room and there was like people just hanging out in like the living room and stuff, and I was like, oh hey, how's it going?
You're like, hey,
Yeah,
what's up, man? Good to see you.
yeah. It's crazy though. This reminds me of sometimes when I see somebody I haven't seen in like 10 years or 15 years or something, and then I'll like run into them and then they'll be like, oh, so how you been? And then I'm just like, oh my God, like what do you like like overwhelmed, happy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
like
didn't even answer the
grateful,
question. Yeah.
excited, like I'm like all of the things, and that's just today. So
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
what's happening like 10 years of that? Like what's happened 10 years ago? So it's
Man, it's
just
crazy what happens even just within the scale of a year. like I want to ask you about that, like your check-ins with growth, but like I always look at like everything in like 1 year time frames, like where was I a year ago, and then where do I think I might be in the next year? And every time I look back, I'm like, there's no way I could have imagined I would be here right now. So it's like thinking
Yeah.
a year ahead. It's like you can't even plan. You can't even
Mhm.
start to wonder where you might be. Like you could try, but I
What
don't
do you
know.
think? Well, okay, let's just go for three things. What's three things that you think that you'll be doing in 1 year?
Podcasting,
Yeah.
living in Ottawa,
Okay.
and loving my girlfriend.
I was gonna say that if you didn't say your girlfriend thing, you'd be screwed. Like,
No. She's chill.
oh, that's great. That's great, man. Yeah. So I only got to meet her for like 5 seconds.
Yeah,
At the
dude,
show.
sorry, it was freezing
Oh,
that night. We
no,
were
no
just like,
sorry necessary. It
yeah,
was. Yeah.
peace. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe how cold it got. I was like, man, I'm gonna die out here.
They're like,
Doing
oh,
comedy outside.
it's all for Johnny Rogers. It's like I gotta go. See ya. Like, yeah, for sure.
That's definitely what I do though. But yeah, man, I've been good. Like I moved here so that I could be closer to family because I'm gonna be an uncle. So
Yeah,
that's sick getting to see that my family like more than a couple times a year already has been nice.
for sure. And they're
Because
in Brockton still, right?
yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
But it's like way faster for them to just pop up here than it would be to get them to drive, the 4 hours to
And
Toronto.
like, and how often is that happening? Like
And
it's
never. No, I
yeah,
always had to come down.
yeah. I remember didn't your parents stay with us? I don't even remember exactly what happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they stayed one time.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
That's
My
great.
poor friend Styles, he slept on the Styles who was on the podcast. He was on like
Yeah.
a couple earlier episode. He came for my birthday and he slept in like a recliner or something. He woke up with like neck issues and
Oh
like
no.
because
Yeah.
there was nowhere else to like sleep.
That's true. Yeah. I remember one time my parents came down and they were sleeping in my room, and like I totally forgot that we were running a comedy show in the living room. So
Oh
then
shit.
during the whole show, like I just kept being like, yeah, it's crazy. Isn't it crazy that my parents are like sleeping in my room right now and that we're having this comedy show and everybody's like, ah, that's so funny. Like they're just dying laughing, and they like nobody thought that it was real, but I kept referencing it. So every time I referenced it, people laughed
Yeah.
even harder because they thought I was just fucking around. Like, really, your parents are just randomly sleeping in your room.
Yeah.
It was like 4 a.m, and I don't know if you remember Ian Todd. So Ian
Yeah.
Todd and like all of us were just in the living room, and they're still drinking, and like we're just laughing and having like a good time, whatever. And my mom comes out to go to the washroom, and she like pokes her head around, and she's like, "Oh hey," I was like, "Oh hey, mom, how's it going?" His face, like he like literally couldn't even like his brain, like it just
He's
didn't
like,
compute. Like he was just like, I thought you were just joking, and I was like, everything I say on stage is real, everything, and then now it's like it blows his mind. Like now all of the stories and everything I make up on stage, I can only imagine him thinking it's
he's just
all
like,
real. Like
he's like, are you actually going through that right now, man? Like he's
yeah,
like coming up, he's concerned after some sets.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was a crazy. Like that place was crazy. Like, and I love that we were able to have, because it was far enough that like they couldn't hear us, but we were in the
Yeah.
living room with like amps, and like shit like that. So yeah.
Yeah, blessed that like you only really had one neighbor in that whole building.
Yeah, that's true. And they didn't care. They were like
No,
letting us do whatever. So that was
they were
great.
super chill. But yeah, good to flipping back to like checking in on yourself. Do you do that like consciously, you find? Like are you sitting down and making like taking stock of like, am I growing, where am I going in the direction that I want to go? Or is it something that you just are constantly having go through your mind like day to day?
Hmm. It's not, I wouldn't say it's day to day, but it is like there is time that I give to myself. And I also make sure that like I only book maybe 2 or 3 meetings a day. And if I'm gonna do events, or like a lot of the stuff that I do is event based, right? So if I'm gonna do an event, that event is the whole day, right? And then leading up to it, I'll try to not book as many stuff so I can like have a good lead up to it. And then those events is like usually where I'm able to make a bit like of more money during those, right? So for me, it's like I have a different like schedule and flow of my days and stuff. But I would say my schooling, my classes really is good for that. Like the other day, we started the class with, all right, we just want like a little bit of movement. It's like and it's very like emotional based, right? So she just like would get us to move, and she's like, okay, like feel it out. If you want to yawn, it's okay. And it's like 20 people just like touching our faces and like yawning. And like, she's like, okay, I want you to like journal for the next 10 minutes. Like, so we're talking about like our placements and things like that. So she's like, placement and supervision is this for me. So like free form, write that, and what your relationship with that. And so many of us were anxious about our placements in January. So her getting us to like free form write about that, then sharing with each other, that kind of stuff. So like my school is really good for that. And then also my therapy, like going to therapy every week is good for check-in in that way. And then yeah, finding things or places to be creative, I think, is a huge plus, right? It's really important to feel like you could just make stuff up and have fun with it. And definitely the taking time for myself, like not overpacking my schedule and like having so many hours, you know, like that has been really fruitful for me, like to be able to just see where I'm at. And if I'm overwhelmed, then one thing that I started doing was I've been able to start rescheduling stuff. So like people could call it canceling, but it's like rescheduling meetings. Like with you, that happened. Like I
Yeah, we
was
just
like,
added a
it was
schedule.
just so chaotic last week, right? Because it was I think we were supposed to do it on the Wednesday or something like that. And then it was like I had so I was working with the Art Gallery of Mississauga. On Tuesday, we had this like huge event. It was literally from like I had to start at like 8 o'clock there. So I woke up at like 6:30, drove an hour
Damn.
to get out to Art Gallery Mississauga. It ended at like 5:30. So it was just like a whole day shit. And then that's when I was on Wednesday, I was supposed to like do the podcast. I was like, no, I really need rest because I have to do it again on Thursday. So it was just like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to like overexert myself, and like being able to do that has been really fruitful. And also surrounding myself with people that like, you know, that aren't feeling as if I'm doing it and it's personal. You know, it's like
Mhm.
that's really important, right? Like I find that like before I was just whoever wants my attention, I'll give it to them, whatever. But it's like now I'm really connecting with people that I can consciously have like good relationships, that I can openly communicate with them and be very direct and being like, no, like I actually really am really excited to be on your podcast, but I still really need to make sure I take care of myself. Cause like
Yeah, of
if I
course.
would have burnt myself out last week and then did all this stuff and I didn't get to like fully be present for it, I think that it wouldn't have gone like it wouldn't be
It would have
going
been a
as well as
bad
yeah,
podcast. You know what I mean? You wouldn't
exactly.
have been in a right
Yeah.
frame of mind. You would have been thinking about a million other things. No,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
totally get that. Yeah, yeah. That is important though, to surround yourself with the right people that will like understand that, because I think a lot of people confuse growth with like doing a lot of things.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
somebody might think like, oh, I need to jam pack my schedule with all this stuff in order to be growing in whatever I'm doing. But then that can end up like burning you out and then doing the opposite of growth, which is like distracting you from, taking that rest time where you can actually like
Absolutely.
process what you've learned and what you're
Mm,
doing and where you want to go, really.
absolutely. Well, this reminds me of when I used to grind stand up so much. So I was doing like like 2 to 3 shows a night. I wouldn't take any time off. I was just going and doing open mics all the time. And then compared to that to now, when I have recovery time, when I have time to write, when I have like events that I'm looking forward to, when I'm producing shows that I actually get really excited about, that like are very, nurturing for me, like all of those things have made me a better artist than I could have ever been by just grinding every single day. But at the same time, I also set a base of like what I was creating at that time too, as a performer, as an artist, and know that how much I can push myself until I like, it was just finding that balance inside of that. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the idea of grinding, but it's like for myself now, just where I'm at, it just doesn't feel like and also like that's another reason it's interesting because I've had conversations recently where people are like, you've been doing comedy for so long, and like, what has it really brought you, right? Like, and that's something that I think about all the time. I've been doing stand up comedy 14 years, and it's like how many galas have I gotten? You know, how many club spots have I really gotten? How many, you know, all the stuff that people gauge what comedy is supposed to be in terms of like your standard of like, you know, what a good comedian and a bad comedian is. At the same time, it's like comedy goes into everything that I do. So like for me, it's like I understand the constructive criticism usually that people are trying to be like, you know, why are you still doing comedy and that, but like it feeds my soul. It literally is something that just like means so much to me and I love it so much. And like anybody who like I've been doing shows with all these years, when they get on a show with me, like they can tell how passionate I am and how much I love comedy and how like much I laugh at other people's work too, because I care about it so much, right? So for me, it's like, you know, everybody just has different standards of what growth is to it. But like for me, I feel like I'm contributing to comedy in a different way, right? Like I'm outside the box of what is the standard stand-up comedian is, but like I'm doing
Hmm.
shit that like other stand-up comedians have never done, right? Like one thing that I did recently, I applied for a grant and I put comedy on my grant. And like that's something that multiple people told me not to do. And if I get it or not, I don't care. I feel like that's a step forward for us as comedians to actually put that on our grants to be like, hey, this is actually a very important part of my like. Because I don't know if I told you about this, but when I applied for the Canada Council previously, I got a call and the guy was like, "Oh, it looks like you have lots of stand-up comedy as your arts." And then I was like, "Yeah, I do. Like, I started like in 2007. I've just been doing it since then. It's just been great, whatever." And then he was like, "Well, here at the Canada Council, we do not consider stand-up comedy as an art form. So we see you have poetry and storytelling, which we can use as, but you are still considered a new artist." You know, that's what he told me. And then I actually was like, well, I'm really glad that you have like an awesome accent, because if not, I'd feel like this was much more insulting. Like, like so painful, right? It's like someone telling me like everything that
You
I
don't
scored before.
matter. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not real, right? And that was
yeah.
really interesting, or interesting is like the word of the year that everybody's using for like shitty. Oh, that's really interesting. But in reality, it was really bad, you know? And then so when I applied for my first grant, like big grant that I was applying for, I just felt it was necessary to, in the grant, highlight obviously the storytelling and poetry and things that I'm doing there, but comedy needs to be in the grant application, whether I get accepted or not. If that's the reason it doesn't get accepted, I'm just going to keep applying, you know? And it's like, yes, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, but like, it's up to us as like us to be able to contribute to move that forward, right? And because just because like stand-up comedians aren't even thinking as that as a possibility to even be part. So like for you have to apply to be like accepted as a new artist or even as a regular artist in Canada Council, but they don't consider comedy as it. So a lot of comedians can't even have that as what they're applying for the Canada Council to get grants in, right? So for me,
Wow.
doing that is something that I was like thinking about the other comedians, and I was thinking about all the comedians that I've been doing comedy with for so many years, and they can't even make a living doing it. They have to work full-time other jobs to do this, right? And like for myself, I feel blessed that like I have other avenues that use the skills that I have in comedy that I can make a living like as a professional speaker. That's really what it is, right? So but it's like that's the thing, is that people criticizing the idea that like I didn't take the traditional comedy routes. Like I open up that conversation anytime, because it's like it's something that I know what it is that I am giving or caring about them, about
I think
comedy.
that would be an insecurity though, coming from the person who's saying that, because like, are the people, and like, you don't have to say any names, obviously, but like, are the people who are saying these things to you gala comics? Like, are they people who have accomplished all of these things, or is it like another open micer who's like, you
Oh,
know
it
what
was
I mean?
yeah, it was actually my brother. I didn't
Oh,
want.
okay.
He was
Get
like,
out of
you
your
know,
brother. His
I've been
opinion
coming.
means even less, Anto.
Well, it's true, because it's like, do you really even know what it's about? Like, because
They
I
don't
told that
even
to him,
know. They're
like,
not even
you
in
think,
it. Like, if
yeah,
it was somebody in it saying this to you, I could be like,
yeah, for
all
sure.
right, maybe listen. Like, if somebody's giving you advice that's in a position that you would like to be in, it's like, okay, take the advice with a grain of salt. But like, if it's
Yeah,
somebody who's not even in the entertainment industry, you're
for
like, all right,
sure. Yeah.
just go away.
Well, the main thing that I think is important to acknowledge at that time though was like it was brought in a sense of like, oh, I've seen you do these jokes before, So like, and now I see it again, and like you haven't really like gotten like
So it's like a
further kind of.
misunderstanding of
It's,
like
yeah, but it's
what
like
the process is.
yeah, and I was doing like a gala set to a certain extent. I was doing like my best like pot because it was for the fresh rice
Yeah.
showcase, right? So it was like in a huge like place, like we were so hyped to be in the CBC like Glen Gould Theater, and like everybody was dressed up nice. It was just like such a. I was like, I'm gonna obviously do like the stuff I've
The
followed
best
for years.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, and then like it was actually really important for me though, because I think that a lot of those jokes I ended up like I just like retired after that. It made me like, it's so interesting
You
because
kind
it
of
was
close the book on it.
yeah, it really felt good though. And like I actually don't even think I've my Gao joke, I haven't even really shared that one since then, right? So that's crazy.
Damn.
I've done so many new jokes. Like I've been doing a lot of new stuff, and it's been really, I've had so much fun doing it, and like just being able to create in like just a very like organic, and a big part of that, it was Laughing Vikings, being able to perform at Lars's rooms. Like yeah, I did probably 5 shows at his place, but we're doing 15 minutes each time. And then
Nice.
I ran like 2 free flows there as well, like, so it was just like so many times that I was able to just like create new stuff, and it just felt so good to be able to do that, so yeah, it just really comes back down to like being able to continuously check in with myself and align, like alignment, I would say, is a huge part of my strength, like of just continuing to figure out like what, because I felt it before where I'm like, whoa, like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now at this time. Like that I felt before so many times that like I know what it feels like to be aligned with like my path, right? And that does come with growth, right? Sometimes you're in that middle ground where you're not feeling as aligned, but like you need time to like kind of recover. And but yeah, I don't know if I've ever told you, but what my favorite word is. My favorite word is serendipity, right? And
Serendipity.
not the movie, but the word. And the word is so special because the definition of it is the aptitude for making desirable discoveries by accident. And what it is that like somebody being able to be skillful and strong enough to be able to notice these amazing gifts, these things that are presented to them, to be able to now step forward into that. And that's what I really connect with in my alignment. I work so hard on myself, and to be able to notice these things that present themselves. And like when you see it and it happens, bam, you just got to jump in and like, be able to grab that. And that's a thing that people always like. I remember there was so many comedians that I saw that just all they cared about was getting a gala or getting a weekend spot, and they weren't ready for it. I was one of the comedians.
Yeah.
I
I
wasn't
think
ready
we
for
all
it.
go through that, right? Like you just
Yeah.
see the thing that and you just want it and you don't really understand like the steps that it takes or the process. And other
Mm,
people tell you like these are the measures of success. So then you want it even more because then that means like social validation as well, right?
yeah.
But it's
Mhm.
like your goals should just be your goals. Like maybe like your goal is just to like have an hour, like just to put out an hour. That's your goal. You know what I mean? Like start with stuff like that.
For
I would say.
sure. Well, that's one of the things that I always tell people, like when when they ask me, they're like, well, what should I be working towards? I'm like, I think that it makes sense of why there's like the standards of time of like the 5 minutes, the 15 minutes,
Mhm.
like the 25,
20, yeah.
the 20, 25, and then the 45 minutes, and then like your full hour or whatever, like there's the fullness of it, right? So like even for myself, one of the things that I was super grateful for when I did the Fringe Festival was that like I did an hour and a half every night, right? So like I was just like like, so obviously I was doing mix of everything, right? I was doing comedy, storytelling, and poetry, and like
Yeah.
MC. So what I would do on the nights, most nights, was I would go in and I would just like talk to the audience a little bit, kind of get to know them a little, and then like tell them like, oh, like this is actually what the whole night's going to be about. Like it's going to be about like love in my life, and what does that look like, and how I've like grown or whatever. And then I would start through the story of like from the beginning, and go through and like tell poems and like whatever. And it was like, for me, what it actually showed me though, it was that being able to like when I watched a lot of like full hour stand-up comedians, they tell so many stories, right? Like especially even Absolute, when I would go watch there, all about the big punchlines with like the stories, right? So, and if you're filling out the 40 minutes or like the 45 minutes or whatever, it's like being able to be so patient inside of it, right? If there's no laughs, you need to know that what it hits and what emotion that you're evoking is worth that silence. That's really what it's about,
Hmm.
right? If they're engaged still, then there's a lot of like reactionary, not head nodding,
It's
things like
just
that.
building. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say though that if anybody is wanting to get more comfortable with doing more time, I would say the Fringe is one of the best places because you can do whatever you want with that time. And what that does is that alleviates a lot of the stresses and the pressures of what it would be from a club or from somebody who's booking you to do that.
Yeah,
You
because
basically
festivals
are
are
ready.
totally different,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah, especially over there, it's not so much focused on that like stand-up comedy club style of like presenting a show.
Yeah.
It's like very like that's where Hannah Gadsby like came out and like
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
I would actually urge any like artist to experience the one person show because what it does is that it forces you to like really be so present with your art. Like what do you have to offer for the audience, but what are you able to do to connect to your deeper sense of self? What is fulfilling for you as an artist on that stage, right? Like even for yourself, I feel like you would do stand up and a part podcast on your like you could do so many different things on an actual Fringe show, right? And that's the cool
Yeah.
part of it is that you front the money, but you end up like having to like get enough people to come out and like do that, right? So for me, I ended up losing $100. So I got like I paid $750 to get into the actual Fringe, and I ended up making $650 from it. So I spent about $100 on that, and then obviously expenses and things like that. So I'm very open with that because I don't want people to think that like going into like your first
You're gonna
like
make a ton of
Fringe
money or
that way
something.
you're gonna
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
ton of money or whatever. But at the same time, like it helped me in all of my arts that I had after that because I did so many different parts of myself came forward during that time, right? Like yeah, it was like very emotional some nights it was very hilarious. Like there was just so many layers of what it was that I was sharing. And what it really came down to was like just me being so present with the work that I've done, right? I've shared so many stories, I've shared so many poems, I've told so many jokes, and it was just me being present inside of delivering all the things that I've worked towards, right? So for anybody who's been doing like a lot of arts for many years, it's like it's great to have that goal to get to and then be able to present yourself, and it also forces you to really put yourself like on the poster. It's about you like sharing that shit, like that's a lot of it, like energy into like believing in yourself, right? But the thing is when I created that, I realized that the only thing that I cared about was to go in with the mindset of like I need to improve, I need to be able to do more time. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I was told multiple times in 2016 when I did Toronto Fringe and I was doing I don't know if I ever told you this, but I did the shed talks. So I was
Oh,
literally
I
in a shed.
remember. Yeah,
Yeah, I was in a
yeah.
shed and it was
Shed
like,
talks.
yeah, and it was like 5 people to 11 people were in there with me at a time as audience members. And I had like 6 different things on a wheel. And so it was like stand-up comedy, storytelling, poetry, miscellaneous, snack time, and special guests. Those were like the 6 different things, right? And then I had a board that every day I would fill in what I wanted to do on the day of, and what the possible snacks were if I whatever I had left, and then what my special guests were, I would fill in that day as well. And then people would spin the wheel, and I didn't know what I was going to perform, right? But then like Evan Demaray, did you say that he was on the show recently? Yeah.
No, no.
Um,
Evan, like 11.
oh, 11. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
But yeah, Evan Demaray told me that must have been a good podcast, by the way. He's great.
Oh, it's
Um,
fun.
yeah. So, but Evan Demaray, and he was like, you should do 15 minutes and just like flow as many people as you can through, and then just kick them out next people and just do 15 minutes. And I was like, that sounds really great, but like I'm building towards an hour show. So every show that I did, it was like they give you 2 hour or 2.5 hour segments. I did 2 hours and then like kind of filter people in and out or whatever because I knew I was building towards doing a whole one person show, right? So it's
Yeah.
taking the steps that you're needing. That was one thing that I've learned during the pandemic as well too. Taking a step in that growth and seeing where you want to get to. It's not going to be like, oh, I want to do that and now I'm doing it. It's like there's big steps that can be taken, right? Like even for myself, like applying for school, I didn't know if I was going to apply for school or not, but I took that course, right? So it's like take
Mm.
a step that like kind of is in the middle, and then keep like really just strategically take the time and like understand that shit takes time. Like there's no it's not like it's not up to us to like just throw ourselves into it right away if we're not that even especially for myself. I do think that I get a lot of anxiety and a lot of like get overwhelmed sometimes when I'm like just in it and like just trying to tread water. Like I know how to swim, I really do know how to swim, but like when if you threw me off a boat and was like tread water and there's like possible like
All these
wild,
other dangers.
yeah, all
Yeah,
this shit that's
yeah, yeah.
happening,
You
I'm
might
just like,
panic a little bit.
oh, like, and it's like my body has that response as well, right? So I think that I do a lot of times in comedy, it's like you want to just do like the most ruthless shows and like then it'll build you up and that, but like that's not how I learn the most. I needed my
Yeah.
hand held. I needed to be nurtured slowly. I needed somebody to give me reassurance and like build me up that way and like, and a lot of times that was myself, but like now I'm surrounding myself with people who I can have conversations with, challenges with, whatever, right? So I do think that that's important for me, is to like be able to acknowledge why that's one of the reasons why the show that I run, Free Flow, is the way that it's set up that it is, right? There's an open mic portion, then there's a booked portion, then there's a headlining spot portion, right? And so like so it's up to it's you start off on the open mic a lot of times, then we'll get you to do like a general featured spot or whatever, which is like 8 to 10 minutes, and then we'll get you to headline at some point. So it's like
Yeah.
kind of taking this, and I'm not saying everybody has to do that. If I've already had you on shows or whatever, it's not,
Sure.
but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
someone who's brand new, like imagine that we've had people who are brand new that started open mic first time and then they were headlining another show in like a year or so, right? So it's like we want people to feel as if like that those steps, it doesn't feel like they're in that alone, which I feel like a lot of
Mm.
times in comedy there is that feeling, right? Like, and even if you're headlining spots, it's like you're just going last on an open mic, it's like most people
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
really like booking and people to see you and things like that, right? So yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, then no, I totally agree with like having that mindset about growth. Is like we can be excited about like a passion or obsessed about it, but like you have to be patient with the growth, which I think a lot of people are impatient with that portion of it. But that's just like a general commentary on society, you know, at large. Like most people they want that like quick gratification. They want that like that's gonna be harmful to them in the long term, rather
Yeah.
than the stuff that sucks now so that it's good in a long time.
Mhm. Well, what's interesting is that that's what I'm like, and we're about to get into some like mindset talk, but like the idea of like a lot of times people might think that it sucks now, but like if you have the mindset and you've had the results previously of being able to be successful with the steps of that, then those steps don't feel as painful, right? Like me taking that course in January didn't feel painful because I was like, oh, I'm still enjoying this, I'm still learning a lot, I'm still making good connections and connecting in this way. Like it still is a great step. It's not like the steps that you're taking is like you're just feeling terrible or
Wasting time or
wasting
whatever.
time, or
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
you're being
Yeah.
forced to like hurt people or things like
Yeah,
that.
it's interesting that we like those narratives almost run automatically though at like a low frequency in your brain, like whenever something like that happens, and you almost have to just like you said, just change your mindset about it. Like it, I'm always like, just tell yourself that it's better than it is, because
Mhm.
it doesn't make a difference anyways. Like if you tell yourself it's bad, then you're just gonna feel bad. But if you tell yourself that it's good and you're gonna be learning from this, then you're going to perceive it as good and you're going to feel good too.
Yeah, and this definitely goes into an interesting debate because it's like the idea of like, well, if it is bad, then it's okay to feel bad about that. But like what's interesting is that when you're feeling bad about something, that's communicating to you in a certain way that like is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Like is that actually going to be
I
worth it in the end, right? And then
I wouldn't
how
say
do
bad though, but I would say like judging yourself too much in those
yeah,
in those
absolutely.
times. Yeah.
Absolutely. There really is like, and that's a big part of, I think, what's happening now is that there is so much time on our own that it's really hard to not have a lot of negative self-talk and like a lot of like perfectionism. Like that was a big thing for myself that like is like interesting, right? Like for me, like I'll give you an example. Like a lot of times in my upbringing, and like it's not like my mom wants to be like this, but my mom, like she still has like certain things that like it's challenging for her to not like think optimistically in a certain way, right? I'll give you an example. Like I was telling her about this job that I was getting and how much I was going to get paid during, and I was hyped about it because in my field, especially in the arts and things like that, you don't get paid this amount that I'm getting, that I've gotten offered, right? And then I was really hyped about it, and I tell my mom that, and my mom was like, "Oh, but like your sister is like making more than that, like and she's like in co-op, you know," and like and I was just like, well, like she's in computers, it's very different, you know, like, and it's just like a very different, like it's not about like the comparison from in my mindset, and it's not about like, for me it was like a goal that I had in mind, like it's a number that I put forward because I believe in myself, and it was way more than what was initially happening, and like they still wanted to hire me for that amount. So like for me, I was just like really and the thing is, it's like I honestly can't even blame my mom, you know. It's just like the way in which that it's where she comes from, it's a much, she worked for the government her whole
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
So like that's what she's comparing it to. And like that's challenging, of
And
course,
it's
but
coming from a place of caring too, right? Like it's not, it may be perceived as like judgment, but in all honesty, it's like they just want to make sure that you're good. Like
yeah,
you,
and taken
yeah,
care of in a certain way.
yeah. Because
Exactly.
then
Yeah.
that's a reflection on how they've raised you also. So that's why they're so like, is this all right? Is everything good?
Yeah. For
Are you
sure.
happy?
For sure. Yeah, and that's interesting because it's like I guess my standard of what's like good and bad is different from them, because like for myself, like I've worked in childcare for so long and like in the arts and stuff, it's like having a consistent paycheck and it being like, you know, way more than what I was making working with kids. That also comes out to like the exploitation that I had at working with children, right? So I guess like it does make sense like why that reaction was in that way, but it also comes back down to like personal criticisms, as I mentioned before. It's like it's hard to not hear that type of criticism or like that type of perfection mindset when it is that I'm going into new avenues or different projects and things like that. It's challenging because I ended up like comparing myself to my sister and brother and like other people and things like that, and it's like a big part of that. A lot of it comes out in my writing, though, in my free form writing. So that's a big thing. I've done lots of workshops recently on that, and like been talking to a lot of like youth about this and like how important having that. People usually journal, that's what they call it, but like free form writing, like it just has so many different styles that it could come out as, and every person's different, right? If someone's like usually writes novel, like they're like a fiction writer or whatever, it's like you're not going to tell them, hey, you need to journal more. It's like you just need to freeform write whatever comes out, whatever style that you want to, like if someone's a comedian, write comedy, like whatever, but
Yeah.
like you need to be or even if you writing's not even for you, like record yourself telling it, or like figure out a way. One of
Get
the
the
things that,
thoughts out of your head, really.
yeah, well, what it is
Yeah.
that it's acknowledging where you're at the exact time of where it is that you're having that and what might be evoking emotion inside of you, and being able to see it. And it actually goes back to what expressive art therapy is that like okay, this is a random situation example, but during our visual art weekend, my teacher or my professor got me to put like a painting or like a piece of paper on the wall, canvas style, on the wall. And she's like, okay, I want you to sit in front of this like piece of paper, and I want you to put your hand on this piece of paper, and I want you to acknowledge that it's not you, it is its own entity, and that you are going to be like creating upon it. And then so I was like, okay. So then she got us to close our eyes and then pick up like, well, pick up our paintbrushes and close our eyes, no paint on it. And she's like, okay, I want you to now like put the paint brushes on the paper and feel what that's like and what the strokes are like, and like feel that like it's like separated from you. And she kept like emphasizing the idea that it's not you, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
she's like, okay, I want you to dip the paintbrushes into the paint, and I want you to close your eyes again. And like you could feel like half of the class, because they're all like painters and stuff, they're like buttholes clenching, they're all like, ah, like it was like so intense.
Close my eyes.
Like I
Yeah,
want you to
yeah.
close your eyes now, and I want you to just envision different shapes and paint and just start painting on. And so like so we started doing that, and then she's like, okay, I want you to put your paintbrushes down, I want you to look at the piece, and got us to acknowledge it's like and how that like this painting, it's like a child to us, right? Because it's not us, it's like our child, it's not us, but it comes from us. So it might feel like it's representing us, but it's its own entity, and it's going to be looked at and judged on its own way. And that's kind of what I feel when I'm journaling now, or when I'm freeform writing now, or when I'm even creating jokes to a certain extent. Like, that's what's interesting about jokes. It's like now I'm starting to create them where it's like they're their own existence. And the more that I'm like trying to make it me, the more rigid it feels, the more like harsh it feels, right? So that acknowledgement that it's has its own autonomy in that way, it's more relational and it's not representative of me only, right? So then it makes it so that I can take more risks. I can take more risks and try more things, because if it's not me, then I'm able to just like be able to just
It
create
loses that
freely.
filter. Yeah. No,
Yeah, and
I
because
totally get what you mean.
exactly, filter, that's exactly the word that I needed to hear right now, because the filter made it so that I was stopping myself from being as creative and like hilarious as I was in my comedy too, right? Because what was happening was that I was like, oh man, people are going to think I'm so weird for thinking this. Oh, people, and like started judging myself on like what I was creating, whereas like when I'm writing it at first, it's just what's the funniest, most enjoyable thing,
Yeah.
and then I'm going back and like judging it so harshly. But it's like this is still part of like it came from me, so it's like I enjoy it and I think it's great. So why not at least try and bring it to the people, right? And like
Something,
it
yeah.
hasn't let me down yet since I started doing that. It's been so great because it's made it so that I haven't, like you said, like filtered all the stuff and like felt like I was being judged for the stuff that I was creating. So yeah, that's a big part of my journaling and free form writing and things like that. It's really important to like just go in without judgments, just be present. Sometimes when I have challenges with starting writing, because I sometimes when I'm feeling too much, I can't access my heart fully in that way, right? Or like my emotions fully in that way. What happens is that I just start more surface. I'll just be like, I'm sitting by my typewriter, and as I write this, there's ink that's hitting the page. The light in my living room is still left on. Maybe state things that you did during your day, and then it starts getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So it's just being so like just present with it, and just being like okay with no matter what happens, it's okay that it takes time and step. And that actually, I guess from our conversation here, that's kind of what's happened in like my actual life as well too, right? You don't have to immediately force yourself to the heart of the what's bringing you down or hurting you. It's
The
like,
importance of transitions.
yes, exactly, right?
We come full
Exactly.
circle.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
you would then, like, because we're coming up to an hour now, so
Yeah.
let's move it right back to transitions where we started. Like, I guess the mindset of transitions would be to like be hopeful of what you're transitioning into and be excited about what you're transitioning into, and understand that uncertainty of change is a good thing, and that like it hardens you a bit and it prepares you kind of for, or over prepares you sometimes for what's next.
Yeah. And also a big part of it is like acknowledgement. So like acknowledging how much work I've already done, how far I've already come, how many
Yeah, don't
times.
lose that.
Yeah, you don't like, that's the thing, is that people are like, oh, I just want to start new. It's like, but you're starting new with like all the skills that you, I don't know, somebody, I probably heard somebody say that as well too. So I don't want to take credit for like that, but like the concept of like being able to really ground yourself in all the work that you've already done to get here, and to be really grateful that like you have the skills now, so that what it is that you're moving forward into, it is new, but it's done in with like a fresh pair of eyes. But it's also still being able to acknowledge that like you've worked so hard to get to this point where you have the skills that are going to be able to move forward with you. And if you don't have those skills, what is it that you do? Like, even for myself in school, it's like I've been in school previously. What is it that I did previously that I didn't do that was really good? So like one thing was I didn't do the readings previously. I would just cheat off everybody else and then like get them to tell me what they were, and then we would
Send me
study
your
together,
test.
and then I would
Yeah.
they would always make like fake tests in my class. There was like, so then we would practice on the tests, and then the tests were almost like exactly identical to the actual, like the people who were in my class back then, like when I was in early childhood education, were like so sweet and helpful for me. But like this
God.
group now, being an adult, and the way that I'm looking at it is like I really do enjoy psychology. I really enjoy the readings and things like that. So I push myself now to be like, okay, I'm gonna do the readings because I didn't previously, right? So
Yeah,
it
you're
really comes from
yearning
both.
for learning this time.
Yeah. So and then I'll be earning from my yearning for learning, right? So but it's really great because it comes from both ends. It's like that groundingness to be strong and like be secure and like bring forward, like really, like it comes back down to like feeling like as if you have your roots down of your tree kind of thing, right? But like
Yeah.
then also the new stuff is more so like the actual branches coming out and the leaves as they're changing in that way. It's like that's the transitionary, right? And that's what's interesting is us talking right now. Like today was the first day it was snowing in Ottawa, and we are talking about
Yeah.
transitions and we're talking
So
about the next
nice.
steps and things like that, right? So I really think that like it makes sense to be able to touch upon both, like how we're keeping our roots and grounding, but also that openness and that hope that you spoke about before. But like for me, that's one thing that I realized, that I hoped so much before, but I didn't pair it with that the actual skill and the groundingness that I
Mm.
have. It was more so like, oh, I really hope that it all works out. But it came a lot more. It came at the expense of effort too, right? There needs to
Yeah.
be effort
It
paired
came in
with.
place of effort instead of being an addition to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it
Yeah.
needs to be. There needs to be like
Yeah.
so many
Hope
layers.
is not a replacement for effort, folks.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it does help with mindset. Like hope is a
Yeah,
good
for
thing for
sure.
mindset. Yeah, yeah,
Do you have anything you want to promote, man? I've got your Instagram up here. If anyone wants to give Anto a follow, it's Anto Pun
yeah,
Fu on
yeah.
Instagram, Pun
That's
Fu
me.
Master on Twitter.
That's me. And then yeah, I just like
Perfect.
also in the wow, that's a beautiful biopic. But yeah, those are my thank you so much for sharing those. Please add me. I always enjoy meeting new people, especially if you're connected with arts and creativity, like and the stage. Those are all things that I absolutely love doing. I've been like mentoring a lot more lately, just being able to support other people to kind of take that next step into their creative journeys. And just also talking about like this type of stuff. Like I love being able to talk about growth, talking about life and things like that. So for me, it's a big part of like what it is that I'm putting a lot of my time and my effort into. It's so reflective, right? When I'm meeting youth that are like just starting to do like stage stuff, their excitement to get their first time on stage reminds me of how much like I need to be in that mindset too when I do
Yeah.
go on stage, right? So that's been
Yeah.
really cool.
Experiencing it like it's that first and last time almost every
Absolutely.
single time.
Absolutely, and I
Hell
love
yeah.
that, right? Yeah, and so
Uh,
yeah, so I am. I also wanted to share that free flow showcase on Instagram is something that I've been doing as well too. So it's actually on my Anto Punfu link tree and all that kind of stuff as well too. So feel free to like add that, and like it is a showcase. So if anybody wants to perform on it, and we actually welcome like yeah. So which one is it? Oh, actually, I might have lied. It's not on there. So yeah, it's even on Instagram. Free flow showcase. Yeah,
Free
that one.
flow
That one.
showcase.
The fourth one there. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Is there?
That one. Yeah, exactly. So
Oh, you have
it's
a
actually
follow?
for all artists. So any artists that want to come on too, we have musicians, comedians, poets, rappers, like, but we also have visual artists that have come on and shared their art and things like that. Yeah, that's me on stage there. So yeah, we've been doing that for about 2 years. We started at right before the pandemic started. January we did, February we did my chapbook release, and then we did a February show, and then bam, pandemic, and then we went online like
Ah,
right away, and then we did over 25 shows online, and then
damn.
this fall we did two. We ended up doing 2 live events at Laughing Vikings. So free flow is a really important space for me. We are going to be having a community conversation in December at some point, just to kind of plan for next year. What are people looking to do? But like community and bringing people together. If you're just starting art or you're just getting creative and things like that, feel free to be in touch with Free Flow page, and then we'll let you know about different events and activities that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, and it can be online stuff too, right? Like you don't have to live
Yeah,
near you guys. So just reach out to Anto. I always tell people reach out to the guests if they enjoy the episode. Please, please, please do that. And tell them
yeah,
how much you liked
absolutely.
it.
Yeah,
But
I would love
Anto,
that.
thank you so much for joining me on episode number 10. We're talking about transitions. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to leave a comment down below. But until next time, stay classy, YouTube.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.